my death was documented within a hospital setting. What I felt was the complete adornment and love and caring of me, that I was special and cherished.
Welcome to Prioritize Your Life and PrioritizeYourLife.com. Today, I am excited to have a discussion with Claudia Edge, which that's a great name.
Isn't that a good name?
Fantastic. Like, my name is nobody knows where I come from based on my name. I either get like Polynesian and then occasionally like Mexican, and it's Italian. It's Lapioli.
Oh, yeah.
So people, you just say, well, ravioli, cannoli. Like, oh, okay.
Okay.
But Edge is so like, I'm Claudia Edge.
That's
It's fantastic.
Right. That's right.
Yeah.
Well, when I married my husband, I said, "Your name is so cool. If you ever divorce me, I'm still keeping your name."
Yeah, totally. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, great. Well, I would love to hear all about your experience. I don't know anything aside from that. I'm assuming since you're with me that it's a near-death experience.
That it's a near-death experience, and all that entails,
Yeah.
right? I was expecting my fifth and last baby. Pretty normal, everything, healthy young mother, and it was just a couple days before my due date that I went into a contraction that did not stop. It just stayed hard.
Yes.
And, it didn't hurt. It didn't, but it was just weird. And I tried to go about my day, and I just felt kind of these whisperings of, you need to go and have yourself checked out.
Yeah.
And it was like, well, okay, as soon as the kids come home from school, or as soon as this or that, or my husband gets off work, or whatever it was. And it just kind of kept, kicking the can down the road, probably because I wasn't in pain. And then it was, is my baby under some kind of distress, because there hasn't been that movement for all day long. I'm sure that it was pretty uncomfortable for the baby. So I went to the hospital. It was in the evening, kind of late evening, and I pretty much had to beg for them to examine me. It was kind of like, there's nothing, no, I'm not in pain, no, all of those things. And they're like, well, why don't you go walk around the hospital and kind of try to placate me. And I didn't get more than around the corner. I just didn't feel right. And I still felt this nagging, I will talk a lot about hearing, and it's a different, how do you explain when you hear something that's not your own voice? It's not on a speaker, from, this is God, but it's that small whispering that you can either ignore or pay attention to.
Yeah.
And it has grown within me over the years, but at the time it was just kind of a nagging thought. And, I went back to the desk and I just said, look, I don't know, something's not quite right. So they said, well, okay, we called your doctor, told him that, if this might happen tonight, go ahead and roll over. He had gone to bed, and it's like, no worries immediately. But we'll take a look and see where you're at. And I barely got a gown on, and I started to bleed. Now, it wasn't normal. I mean, I made a kind of a noise of, I'm seeing this, and the nurse tried to calm me down. This could be normal, or, this is okay, don't worry. But then it was as if a 5-gallon bucket had dropped, and it was my blood. It was my life-giving blood was all over the floor and the walls and the nurse and our shoes and legs and her uniform. It just did a splash that was kind of like The Shining, The elevator door opened and wham.
Wow.
And of course, then, her attitude changed to, you know,
Oh, maybe we should have
kind of
been listening to this lady.
controlled panic. And I'm just, I was trying to pick my jaw up, it's like, what is happening? Again, I was in no pain. So that is, I'm looking around at the amount of this blood, and the nurse just kind of pushed me down on a gurney. At that point in time, I wasn't even in an examination room. They hurried and pushed me to an exam room. They were calling code, and, my doctor wasn't there. He'd rolled over in bed. There was nothing happening surgery wise or anything for an anesthesiologist. I mean, there just was nobody around in this dire situation. And they were calling code, and an intern came that was not a baby intern. I don't think he had even served when they do their stints all over the different things, because he came in and there was a deliver baby kind of booklet he was looking at, and I just kind of went, oh boy, and but he was the one, and I gave my life over to him and just asked him to please save my baby. And at that point it was like, God and this guy, they're either going to get me through it or not. But he had said the minute that he walked in the room, but by the amount of blood in the room, it looked like I had about 2 minutes left to live. So I will insert here, because sometimes I forget to tell why, but the blood was going into a placenta that's between the mother and baby, that regulates everything, temperature, food, and everything. Blood was going in, but it wasn't coming out. I don't know why, but what all day long with that pumping in, and maybe, just some coming out, but not the full amount, it just kept getting tauter and tauter until it exploded. And when they, what they told me afterwards, I was full of living shrapnel. It just blew.
Oh my goodness.
And so hence why I was not in pain. So now I'm being talked about, because all bedside manner goes away. When I'm hearing, I have 2 minutes to live, I mean, I felt still fine, no pain. And you start going through, that the stages of grief and the stages of acceptance of dying. And, there's that shock, and then, kind of the anger and everything. I went through those stages in about 30 seconds, because I only had, I didn't have that many, that long to go through them. But I got to the point of acceptance, and that's when I said, please, please save my baby, is what I asked. And my reasoning, as if I panicked, the heart's pumping blood out, and more blood is, so if I'm calm, maybe my heart is going to pump less. This was my layperson. It made sense to me, right?
Sure.
And so I was trying to be calm, but when they, again, graphic note here, no anesthesia, no aspirin, anything, not even a warm blanket for comfort. I was completely exposed. They pulled the light in the examination room, not even in the operating room. There wasn't time. This was all in a matter of just minutes of getting to the hospital. So I've had questions of, well, doctors wouldn't do that, or, this or that. It's like, hey, you're dying, and I had given my okay. So now I'm laying there being cut open, an emergency C-section, which is basically stem to stern, and they're moving parts. They're trying to get to the baby. And that's when the pain set in.
Oh my goodness.
It was, I still can't find words to describe that kind of pain. And at the same time, I was in this juxtaposition of thinking, if I don't panic if I don't move, and I'm going to save my baby by living even those 30 seconds or 1 minute longer by not panicking. My legs wanted to just jump off the gurney and run away. The pain was so bad, but so I was fighting against my own self of just trying to lay there while these things are happening to me, and that was that was tough.
Oh man.
And it was at that point I heard some music down the hall. It was MASH, the theme song from MASH,
Yep.
right? And
Of all
and
the
I
things to hear at that
yeah,
moment, yeah.
yeah. So I'm hearing that and I'm thinking, there's music, just be calm, just be calm. But my hearing was becoming very acute. I realized, and then I felt like I was kind of being going backwards a little bit, like everybody that was working on me seemed to get further and further away from me. They lifted sorry, this one's hard to talk about, but when they lifted this little lifeless body from me, I'd had enough. It was pretty traumatic, and I popped out of my body. And so I wanted to, when I tell my story, one of the most important parts that I want to focus on is how easy, I mean, getting to the point of death, we all die, and we're all going to die a different way, but not to fear death itself, because it was the softest pop. It was no, it was a pop, and I was out, and I was free, and there was no more pain, and I wasn't confused or scared or anything. It was very familiar, like, I don't know, muscle memory. Somehow it was like I could float. I didn't even realize that I was to go where I wanted to go, which was I was following the music. Where is this coming from? It didn't dawn on me that I had gone through walls or that I really wasn't using my legs. Was not even a thought to me. And I ended up, I had several incidences in the hospital, but when I got to where the music was playing, I stood there, I was there for a while in a gentleman's room, and he had no idea I was there. I even went in front of him and did kind of one of these, teasingly, to kind of, and he had no, and that's when I realized, oh, I'm dead. I guess I'm dead. It hadn't really even dawned on me before. That's how natural it seemed. And so as soon as I thought that, there was this, I'm in a different place. And I was in a place of complete blackness, complete darkness. There was no seeing anything. Everything in this place was feelings. And what I felt was the complete adornment and love and caring of me, that I was special and cherished, and it was like I was held, like I was swaddled in this perfectness of what was around me, and it was enormous. The fact I saw there was no end to it that I could feel. It just went on and on. I was just in this vastness, and people have said, "Well, you were in the void." Well, to me, void sounds like it was minus something, and this felt like everything, like it was perfect, and it was intelligent, and it knew me. It knew everything about me, and I saw nothing that would make me want to say it was void. It was vast, is what I've come up with, that feels more correct than anything. But I was in this place for I don't know how long, when I started to hear, and I put my hand here because it feels like it was from this side, and it was saying, Claudia, Claudia, you've got a baby girl and she needs you. So my baby girl lived. I forget that just to say that sometimes. And it was so, because I'm in this perfection of quiet and just feeling that this scratchy, itchy earth voice was so, oh, it just, I just wanted to move and just wrap more darkness around me, right? And I finally, it just kept coming, and I finally was like, I know I'm just going to tell them I'm okay and just to leave me alone. But as I was trying to form an earth word, earth mouth, or whatever to say the word, I didn't feel like I was lacking anything. My Claudianess was still all there. In fact, I'll step back and just say, when after seeing my daughter in that state of not moving, and I looked down at my body, and I had no real feeling for that poor woman on the table. I was fine, and it was as if I had taken off my overalls at the end of the day. There was about as much affiliation with that body
Mm.
as I felt for her. And so now, as I'm hearing this come back, and I'm forming this, no, I don't want to go back. And as soon as, I was kind of bringing earth into my experience, I guess, I was back in my body. It was an instantaneous thing that I was back into the trauma and pain and everything else. So it took me a long time to recover from this. I was in the hospital. I was kind of famous around the hospital. They called me Pioneer Woman because of what I had endured,
Oh my,
right?
yeah.
And I was kind of slated as a really good near-death experience candidate because I was not subject to any kind of anesthesia. I had no drugs in me, and being pregnant, I didn't even take so much as an aspirin through my, or
Sure.
caffeine or anything through my pregnancy.
Yeah.
So I was kind of a clean bill of health, right? And my death was documented within a hospital setting and everything.
Yeah.
So they thought, oh great, she's great. Let's get her story. But how come all these experiences are so different? Why was I in the darkness, and this one went to a garden, and this one spoke to grandma, and it's
Mm-hmm.
like, if you're dead, shouldn't our experiences kind of be the same?
What's interesting, having done these interviews for a little while now, and I definitely think there's some truth to that there are some differences in all of the stories, but one thing seems very similar, and every single one of them is this feeling of never-ending love. Like, I love this idea that we come from love and we return to love, and everything that you said, even though what you were actually seeing when you kind of moved away from Earth is maybe a bit different. I've never heard that exactly. And I don't know. I don't know what the right answer to that is either. It might just be that we are all so different, and maybe that is a part of that never-ending love and the love of God, that we each experience something a little bit different, maybe up until the point where we kind of all move on to whatever is
something that
next,
we need, or,
right?
or
Yeah,
whatnot.
maybe
Yeah.
it is like an example of, I try as hard as I can. You have a lot of kids. I've got 7.
Oh my
And
goodness! Wow.
I try to not be a cookie cutter dad, right? Like, I want to try, and I know that each of my kids are so different and they require different things. And so maybe in a way it's kind of like that. It's like, it's a loving God that knows that, yeah, each of us need a little something different. But
Yeah.
that's my
Yeah.
best response to that
Depending on
anyway.
our personality or
Yeah.
our fears, or
Yeah.
whatever. But when they started asking me questions, I I didn't really have a good answer.
Yeah.
I started out with, I was in this perfect blackness.
Yeah.
Now, and I just saw across the interviewer's face, like I registered it as negativity. Like, oh, this isn't exactly what we came for, and she's not giving us, a
Yeah.
good story or something. But it made me think about, the labels that we put on things, and, good, and this white is good, and, the blackness must be bad. Maybe you went to another place or something like that. And I knew I hadn't, but you start letting those things in, and you start questioning, your own sanity or whatnot. And
Yeah.
I decided that I was going to protect this perfect experience, that it was sacred to me. It was mine, and I pushed it down in deep in my heart and just protected it. And I didn't talk about it, um, because I just didn't want it spoiled by opinion.
Yeah.
And it stayed that way for a very long time. What I've learned is, that my being in this perfect darkness was kind of a shield for my trauma. It's taken a very long time to understand my near-death experience, and it has grown tremendously. I receive dreams and visions, and I think as you learn to accept, and I'm like, gimme, gimme, this was great. The more you ask for, the more you receive. And so I have a really good understanding of the why I was in the darkness. Is I just wasn't quite ready. I was a young mom, and my feelings of where I belonged in the world and who I belonged with, and all of those things come into play.
Yep.
And so these things just kind of came in very slowly and with my permission, because I was asking, because our greatest gift here is our free will. And this journey is really important. It may seem that we're just getting up and going to work, and what's for dinner, and if I got a clean shirt to wear tomorrow, and it just seems so mundane sometimes. And what is this? Why am I here? The big questions, who is God, and who am I, and why am I here, and what is my purpose, and all of those things. And I was getting those answers, but only if I, as we've heard, you do the work, you do the ask, I read books, I talked to people, I expanded what I knew by, I've met many of your guests that you've had on this show that have had these amazing experiences. And I started getting these flashbacks. And one time I asked, and I was like, is this memories of my NDE, or are these new experiences? And there was just this kind of giggling laughter. And it was like, does it matter? Does it make a difference? And I thought, well, no, I guess it really doesn't.
Yeah.
I would get these great lessons or understandings through like story form, metaphors, parables, things that I could grasp and then bring back, to kind of explain some of those great big questions that we have
Yeah.
with simplistic answers based on a story, pictures, and, things
Sure.
that, and it becomes almost addictive to like go to sleep and go, oh, I hope I get one of those great dreams tonight. They don't come as often as they did,
Sure.
but I have been so lucky to receive communication from my past loved ones. I lost my dad when I was 16. I adore my dad, and I've missed him. And it was 40 years without any kind of dream or anything from him before my very first time with him. And And it was amazing. Both my little sister I've lost and my mother and my dad are the ones that have really been my greatest teachers. And my mother has focused on continuing communication and showing me it is possible to communicate. And my little sister has just been awesome in coming and still being that funny sister, and she'll share things with me and answer questions, but she'll always leave me with a word that I don't quite know, or it's not in my vernacular or something, so I'll have to look it up afterwards. So she leaves me evidentiary evidence when she visits, and I love that because I can, it's like I didn't know what that meant until she shared that word with me. My journey after my NDE has been a lot of as I accept new things or learn new things, and it's not something that I do easily. I really research and I check myself. How does that make me feel? And I would say to the audience, hold it up to the light, whatever I'm saying right now. It's kind of like you don't have to hold that right now or take it as correct or anything. If it doesn't sound right, put it on the mind shelf or just toss it aside. But if it's something that you might want to explore at a later date, examine it and look at it. And so that's what I have done with everything. It's been a very slow process for me because this experience was almost 40 years ago. So yeah.
So with everything that you've been through with the initial experience, and then it seems fairly common to have kind of a door to the other side kind of open up and have communication. I don't think it happens with all near-death experiences, but maybe it has to do with the willingness that you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, you mentioned some of those big questions, and a lot of the time, the people that watch these kind of things, that's exactly what they're looking for, are those answers to those questions. So I'd love to hear your response to some of those based on what you've been through. Like why do we come to Earth from your perspective, and what's the point?
We're here in service. We love God. We want to serve God. And we come here as a physical shard, basically, looking for a better word, of God. We are a piece of God here in the physical. And when we've done our thing and we've had our trip here, it's our experience is brought back. Some of the experiences are really horrible. Losing a child, the trauma of being in a war, all of these things that we put ourselves through. Why would we do that? Why would we pick to come here and starve? It's like I can't even imagine on the other side and going, I volunteer for that. But you know what? We do, because we love God so much that we're willing to do those things, because it's an education as individual shards of God to bring us closer to God, because it's where we want to be. When the more the knowledge that we obtain, the more that we do, the closer we get, which is exactly where we want to be. My school lessons are titled, so I know when I'm going in, usually it's like, this is a metaphor. This isn't how it is. This is, hey, don't get it twisted, girl, right? We're giving you a story. What I was shown was this really beautiful purse, like a coin purse, but larger.
Okay.
Beautiful silken fabric with beads and stones and things with golden thread. I mean, it was a very beautiful work of art, was this purse as God. It began to tear off pieces of itself. And here on the ground was a shred of the pretty fabric. This one had the fabric, but they were all different shapes and that had been torn off. Some had the golden thread kind of still hanging on, or one had one bead or a couple of pearls or whatever. So around itself are all individual, very unique. None were the same. And sorry, because I know I'm talking about something that sounds so silly, but it's so sacred at the same time to have been shown the act of God energizing, giving that light of God. And they began to just move on their own and out of the picture. And so when I say that God is like a perfect tapestry, and we're all kind of working to get back to be that piece of God, to be that shred that got torn off, to go back to God, is kind of the visual that I got to see of who we are and why we do this. We're in service because we love God so much.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that metaphor.
Yeah.
And I think it goes right along with saying that we go through all of these things and then we return to love, because I think that maybe the end visual I see in my mind is then all of those pieces go right back up into that beautiful...
Until the perfect tapestry of God, right? Yeah.
That's really cool.
So
it's beautiful.
When I wake up from one of those, man, I'm just elated. I'm like, oh my goodness, I understand.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to sit in front of a camera and try to say that without it being a funny, because I cherish it. But then that's the other side, is funny.
Yeah.
They are every opportunity to poke with a joke kind of thing. Yeah. They're light-hearted and fun.
Those have been some of my favorite, mentors that have taught me spiritual principles, have been people that aren't, that's okay. It's like one part,
it doesn't have to be serious.
Through all the suffering and how hard life can be, if you're willing to have some humor with it, that can make life wonderful.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. When anybody that I've met that has that, kind of that more psychic ability than I do, they'll say, you need to have more fun. You need to laugh more. You need to, find more joy, do more joyous things.
Yeah.
And I found that's pretty much the message every one of us are getting. It's like, go have some fun. Yeah. It doesn't have to be so heavy and so serious. So I try and do a little bit of that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. There's a lot to take away from that, and I'm sure it'll help plenty of people in different ways. And that's one of the beautiful things about this medium. And I see purpose in the fact that more of these stories are coming to light, because just as we talked about, while not all of the experiences are like exactly the same, I think maybe in sharing them, your unique story will also touch unique people, and they need to hear specifically from you. And I think some of that is, I see God in that plan.
Thank you.
Too.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I'm not opposed to if someone has questions. I did. You can contact me at claudiaedge.com. Would gladly talk to you. If you're open to these things, then more will come.
Sure.
Because of our free will, we have to ask.
Right. Thank you so much. And it's just, it's been a pleasure to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.